This video is about retrofitting a telestart to my VW T6 diesel. This is the telestart module and this is the switch to activate it. I'm also going to fit the overhead display screen and make a wiring harness to connect all the components. The first thing to do before you do any cutting, coding or any work on the vehicle is to do a scan using VCDS and verify that the vehicle is clean and clear of any errors. The scan should be done with the engine running and any errors should be cleared one by one, and if they return you should deal with them before you start. You don't want to find at the end of the process you've got an error that's got nothing to do with the work that you've done. We should also save the complete log file for reference. VCDS is popular for this because the log files are quite easy to read. The next thing to do is to find the part number for the telestart and the roof display on the internet. You find the part number by going to LL Car Parts, use the part diagrams. So the one that we're looking for is the display and control panel with timer for vehicles with auxiliary heater, and we want it in pearl grey because that's the colour of our car. So that's the number that we need to search for, or we need to ask at a breaker's yard to see if we can get one of those at a good price. To find the remote, we go back and then we go down the diagram. So this is in the electrical section, and we part number for the telestart, and then that's the remote switch that works with it. So once you've accumulated all your components, you need to think about how we're going to connect them together. In order to sort that out, I went onto the Airwin website, downloaded the wiring diagram and printed out the locations of all of the components that I'm interested in working on. And that cost me €8 to access the documentation. This is a short demonstration of me going onto the VW Airwin website. I then go to the correct location to download the wiring diagram, or flowchart as it's also known. I then scroll down to the tab where you can go through the paywall and access the download button. For the 1 hour fee, you get one download and unlimited printing rights. I would recommend that you download the flow diagram. So the flow diagram is quite straightforward. It looks a bit daunting. These are identical, pretty much identical to the ones that I was using with BMW previously. If it's those little arrows, you just fold that over and then put that together, and then you see the whole diagram. And this is the section that we're interested in for our retrofit. And these blocks are the modules we're interested in. So this block, the R149, that's the reference R149. So that's the control unit, that guy. And I'm going to run out of space in the screen here. And we're interested in the J702, which is the rooftop control module. So these are the modules that we're adding to the car that aren't in the car. And then what we need to do is we need to check all of the wires running out of these modules, see if any of those wires exist in the car. And if they don't, we need to plan where they go and then put them in and make the connections to these other modules that we know are in the car. I'm going to try and remove this cover plate first, where that is going to eventually end up. And yeah, just have a look on the back where the clips are. So I'll assume that this is clipped in the same way. So So sadly, the plug for the overhead display unit was not hiding up in the headliner. Now we're going to look where the Teletronic module gets fitted underneath the dashboard to the left side of the steering wheel. So with the cover removed, the best thing to do is to push this insulation sheet, pull it out a little bit to come free, and then push it up into the into this area of the dashboard just temporarily. And now we can come down and see the locations of our control modules, and the blue connector should have been here. So obviously this car doesn't have any of the heating wiring looms, so yeah, that's gonna need to be added. So there's the telestart module pushed in. Sadly, that's probably the easiest part of this project. Yep. And now we can see what wires are missing, which is all of the wires, and I can measure the distances between the modules roughly, and then order some lengths of the correct colour wires. So from the flowchart, we can determine which wire we need to buy. So if I look along the wire, we can see this number, that's 0.35. That's the cross-sectional area of the wire, and then ORGN is the colour code. And if I come down to here, you can see that OR is orange, GN is green, and so that's an orange wire with a green stripe round it. So I've ordered the wires for the project. I've got the 2 wires for the communication line from the screen. These have to be twisted together to avoid interference. I've got the big brown wire, that's the earth line from the screen down to the grounding point. I've got the red wire that is powering the screen down to the fuse box here, and it's the same wire that's also running to the telestart here. And then additionally, I've got the green and white wire that's going from the telestart through to the actual heater. I recommend buying 10 meters of each cable. And then these 2 cables are the aerial cable, and that I just bought as a all-in unit that just plugs straight onto the telestart with the correct connector already on it. For the telestart, I bought this connector. For the screen, I've got that connector. For the wiring harness that comes from the roof, I've got this connector. And for the main body harness, I've got this connector. All the other connectors were on the car. The question that comes up quite often is, how do I find out which connector to buy? So what you do is you look at the module that you're interested in, and you can see the connector that's connecting to it. So in this case, it's only got 1 connector, and it's called the T16G. That information, you then use the fitting location diagram and the T16G, you get a description of what that looks like up here, and it's a 16-pin black connector. You then go to LL Car Parts, who seem to be the only people that are doing a Volkswagen part diagram online, and you bring up the part diagram for the roof wiring harness where we've got the missing connector, and that's the top part of the harness. So it's going to be one of these connectors. They're all different, so there will only be one that's described as a 16-pin black connector. So you go down the list of all the connectors until you find the one where the description matches 16-pin and black, and it's this one here, and then that's the part number, and that's the approximate price if you buy it from LL Car Parts. Pin choice is quite difficult. I got the information by writing to the pin manufacturer that I'd found on Amazon, and they told me which pins to buy based on the connectors that I was using. I'm just going to put a list and share the information with you. You have to make sure the pins correspond to the dimensions of the wires that you're using, otherwise you can either have too much wire in them and they won't close properly, or you'll have too little wire in them and then they'll be loose. And just something to watch out for. So I'm going to make the twisted pair first. So with the drill, I'm just going to add my twist, a little bit of tension, and hopefully okay, so we've made our twisted wire.
So I'm just going to cut off the end that was damaged by putting that into the vise. Then I'm just going to peel back the two cables. Use the wire stripping device to do this properly. Okay. I'll take the MQS. So that's a MQS ferric bush.
Perfect.
So we take our connector from this location here, and we just slide out the centre of it, like that. So that then gives us our sort of pin carrier. And you can see on that end the shape that the pin needs to be rotated to fit in, and the location of the pin is found by looking on the outside. It's difficult with a black connector to see this, but just here on this little square there is a number, and the number that's written just there needs to be the number that the right wire is going in.
So the green and orange and green wire needs to go into number 1. It's difficult to see past my phone. Goes in there, like that, and then we just push it into the first slot and then push it completely home so that little silver tab is located there. So this little image shows the pin assignment. So pin 1 and 2 for the communication lines, 14 for the earth, and 13 for the positive feed. So with the 4 wires in, that is basically finished. All we need to do is slide the connector housing hood onto it and then bind the wires together with the fabric loom tape. So I'm going to do a slightly unnecessary step at this stage, and I'm going to put the additional 4 wires into this connector that allow the rooftop control module to control a air standing heater which would be fitted to the right side of the car. It's not necessary for this retrofit, but it's something I'd like to do in the future, so I'm going to just put the cables into the roof harness so that they're there and ready for me if and when I get round to doing that. And that's it, with all the additional cables in for the air heater.
Pay attention to that. Try and get the angle going. Like this.
So that's the headliner cable loom almost done. Just needs to be put into place, cut to length, and have that connector block attached to the cut end. With the A-pillar removed, you can attach the new wiring loom to the old roof wiring loom, following the exact same route. Work from the bottom to the top and attach it with regular intervals with zip ties. So that's the screen in and connected at that end, and the cable attached. So I followed the loom all the way down to here. Let's just get a bit more light in here with that little torch. And then that cable then comes through here, and then it's going to go up and into that position up there. So for this connector, the connectors that fit into it are the MCP 1.5 and the MCP 2.8, and I've just done a picture which is in the top corner where I compare the ones that I popped out of an existing connector that was on the car with the same connector, and these look identical, so hopefully fit. With this connector fitted, the roof harness is complete, and now we need to do the body harness. So now we're going to prepare the wiring harness that's on the car. So this goes from the fuse box and the ECU to the connector T10AF and terminates in this plug. The connectors that fit into it are these ones. I've just put a photograph up in the corner where I took one of these connectors that was already on the car, and I popped a release pin into it, pulled them out, and then did a visual comparison, and these are identical to the ones that Volkswagen used, so they're good for this plug. Right, I'll get on with it. So now we're going to tackle the taking the positive line from this blue connector back to the fuse box. Now we've got to create this connection B322, which goes from single wire out to 3. One is connecting back to the fuse box, one is going to the telestart, and one is going to reference 6. Now I'm slightly confused by this, but basically what you do is you reference 6, you look down on the line at the bottom here, so that one's reference 6 is on line 39, you go back to 6, and then you follow the diagram up until you see the corresponding reference back to 39, and then you know that that wire there is like a teleport over to there, and then it comes down to connection 5A on 708. Now I've checked, 708 is the residual relay. 708 is the relay 3A in this location here, and if you look on the car, there's actually, that looks like one relay in the picture, but it's actually 2, and so hopefully, I've looked on the car, we've got that relay there, so hopefully we can pull out the power supply there, which we know is going back to, because the diagram tells us that's going back to the fuse box. So instead of running a wire all the way back to the fuse box, having to take off half the dashboard, we're just going to connect into the residual relay here in the behind where we're, so that's the location where that plug's going. So that red wire just needs to connect over to there, so it's not really got to go very far at all. So after much fiddling, I've managed to release the positive connection from the relay, and I'm going to try and do a splice off of that line to take a power feed to the telestart and to the rooftop display. We're going to do that with one of these barrel connectors and using this set of crimping tool, and I'll now demonstrate that. The wire is stripped by cutting around the wire carefully with a sharp knife, not going through the copper centre, and then doing a vertical cut up the wire. You can then peel off the piece of plastic insulation and expose a nice bit of copper wire to then do your barrel connector round. The barrel connector gets a little bit of insulation tape and then a bit of cloth tape to conceal the repair. So that's it complete. So we've got our little junction connecting to the red here. We go up, loop back with the two red wires coming into our new little loom that comes down to here and then down to the blue connector, and then we've got our spur coming off and coming down here, to which we'll put on the connector that then goes to the telestart. And then we've got this loose wire which I did want to tie onto the brown here, but it was just too awkward underneath all this plastic. And there's a really easy earthing point just down here where everything else goes to, so I'll just join that wiring loom there, which is the earth wires, wrap that cable into it and then bring it down to that earthing point that's just behind the bonnet opener. Where is it? There. Yeah, there. This is roughly what the wiring harness looks like off the car. So I've got the blue connector, then I've taken these two, they're about 30 to 40 centimeters long, red wires coming out from here, and then I've doubled them back to then loop to the telestart. And so what we've got is one of those wires is coming down to here, and then that's the loop back to the telestart, and then I'm going to join just here, which is this wire on the relay that's directly next to this blue block. And then I've introduced the green and white wire, which is this line here coming from the telestart, and then I'm feeding that back and then out on this line that's then going to head off in the direction of the driver's car seat. And then I'm going to connect those cables in somewhere near the T17P, which is the red connector under the driver's seat. So that's it with the blue connector fed in. There's the cable at the back comes through this ducting here, and then it goes back on itself through there, and then there's a fixing point just there where I've put a little zip tie on. It's difficult to catch that with all the shadow. And then we follow down, the earth drops onto the earthing point there, and then I've got the three wires heading off towards, and I'm going to go under the I'm going to take the easy route and go under the carpet directly to there. The correct route is to go not out there, but to go directly up over there's like the main, it's called the cross car beam. It's like a big tube that goes across the interior of most cars. And then we go across the top of that, takes us above the steering panel, and then I'm guessing we drop down the back into the centre of the floor and then tee off to here. But in order to do that, I'd have to take out all of that, the passenger seat and the carpet, and yeah, honestly, I've had enough. The final bit is to take those three wires, put the connector on the end of those. So connectors in on the telestart module, just use these standard MQS Farrac connectors into the blue connector there. So nothing fancy. Next step is to fit this universal aerial to the telestart connector. Apparently you don't need an aerial, but I'm going to put this one in anyway. It wasn't expensive. I've glued the antennae up to the flange behind the windscreen, and I've taken the cable along the roof wiring harness and down to the exact same position as the blue connector on the end of the roof wiring harness. I tied up the excess wire in the wiring loom. With the telestart fully connected, it's time to move on to the seat base. So I fed the new cables through and into the area under the left-hand seat, and just here is the connector that goes down to the the auxiliary heater, and you can see on connector 1 we're lucky enough to have the green wire already here, so that's good news. So this is the connector from the body wiring loom, and this is the side that we need to connect our cables into, and we just need to put the green and white into that free hole there, and then the 2 communication lines from the overhead display unit need to be connected to the to these 2 cables that are twisted together here. I'm going to first splice in the communication cables. Carefully remove a 5mm section of the wire insulation. I then use a barrel connector to add in the extra wire. The joint has to be insulated with some heat shrink. The red connector on the body harness uses the MCON 1.2mm style connectors, as shown in this picture. We need to crimp one of those onto the green and white cable from the telestart unit. The MCON is a bit tricky. You can't just, this is normally done with a seal on this connector, and so I'm going to do it in 2 steps. I'm going to first crimp that around the wire, and then I'm going to crimp that around the insulation of the wire using the seal tool.
Really basic crimping tool I have. This is an individual step, it's not quite as easy to use as the other one. So I put the wire in. Finally in. So that itself is good to connect up, and then we're just going to pull these wings in. And then this is the one which would normally be used with the seal. So that'll start it off, and then I'll just tighten it up with a pair of pliers. If needed. Oh yeah. Using to roll that in itself. Right, hopefully that doesn't bulk the connector this time. There we go. It's in, looks good in the connector. Then need to, now the connector's locked, and it's ready for reinstallation. Let's pull that nice and tight all together. Looks professionally done. Like it was never there. Okay, down through. Reconnect. Now, just get that right. Pull that down.
Before I connect the screen, I've just checked that I'm getting a voltage up here and that my earth's good. So I'm probably blocking the micrometer, but I'm getting 12 volts there. And I checked with the you can turn these things to the audible to check your circuits. And I checked the 2 communication lines down to the seat. When checking the resistance down the CAN lines from the screen to the seat base, you need to take the battery off the car and let the system completely discharge. You check that there's no voltage across the CAN high and CAN low. You can then take a resistance measurement down the CAN lines individually. You should get a resistance of about 0.5 ohms down each wire. and if there's any voltage left on the system, you will get a faulty reading. That they were connected, so the cabling is all perfect, so we can now assemble that and put in the little screen without any further delay.
Push that firmly into the plates, press the red button to install it, offer it up, job done. Put the light back in. I've got to just select which one of these little cover plates is the right one, just to see one with a slight curve on it.
Oh, there you go, it's powered up, looking good. So the next thing to do is to do the coding element of the project. We start that by doing another scan like we did at the beginning of the process. This time we're going to have a few error messages. Once the scan is complete, again save the log file. Go to this location to find the log file and open it. Scrolling through the log file, we can see the two areas that we need to address. We can see that there's errors created by the screen now being installed, and we can see the original setup for the heater, which we need to change. The coding on the heater should read 5101, and we need to change the software version to 272B. What I'm going to do first is add the screen to the vehicle CAN gateway system. That should clear the red error messages. Double click where it says CAN gateway on the list to open the next window. Now click on the installation list. Scroll down to where it says overhead display 6E. Tick the box next to 6E. Write the coding, that's the button on the top right hand corner, and you're done. Now take another scan of the vehicle. That should confirm that the coding has taken and the errors have cleared. In my case, there was still an internal error with the 6E module. It was a new error, and I'm hoping that it will clear when I complete the retrofit. Now we're going to modify the software and coding that's saved on the heater control module. This has to be done in Odis Engineer, not Odis Service or VCDS. You also need a generic 6154A cable and a Windows laptop running Windows 12 Pro. I use the version 12 of the Odis Engineering software. I bought it from toolsforcar.uk. You can also buy the flash files there, and I'd recommend that you do because they give a little bit of support and you're not downloading it from a torrent site in Russia. Start Odis Engineering and do a scan of the car to get the component list. From the list, select the auxiliary parking heater and choose the vehicle function flash. A new window opens. In this window, you can choose the location of the flash file that you want to put onto the auxiliary parking heater. The next step is going to take several minutes to complete, so the car needs to be running or connected to a power supply. Make sure that only the auxiliary parking heater is selected and start the flashing process with the button on the bottom right hand side of the screen. It's super important that this process isn't disturbed, so your laptop should be plugged in and you shouldn't be doing anything on it while the process is running. Once the process is completed, follow the on-screen instructions to clear the error codes and conclude the process. Now we go back to the auxiliary heater to change the coding so that it recognises that the Telestart remote switch is fitted. Select the RF transmitter without display and apply the changes with the button on the top right hand corner. This step changes the binary coding on the heater from 4101 to 5101. You can also do it in VCDS. Finally, I check the settings on the auxiliary heater by using the identify function, I'm looking that the coding has changed and a software version is now the new one. With the programming complete, we come back to VCDS to check that we've got an error-free car. Unfortunately, I still have the error in the overhead screen. The error on the screen is an EEPROM error. This is part of the Volkswagen security system which stops you from switching parts between vehicles. I tried a lot of things to clear this and I was ultimately unsuccessful and bought a brand new module from Volkswagen. Nobody else seemed to have this problem on any of the forum boards that I read, and the screen isn't technically part of the Volkswagen security system, so I don't really know why I was having this problem. I did buy 2 used screens and they both had the same problem. With the new screen installed, I check it to see if it's got an error. Thankfully, the error is clear. And then I set about changing the coding on the screen so that the remote works. The coding should read 00, 01 and 03 for the screen to work with the auxiliary heater and a remote control. VCDS recognises that it's a new screen and I initialise it with the access code 12345. VCDS confirms that the process has been successful. The heater should now work and there's no errors in the computer system. The final step is to learn the remote control into the computer system so that it activates the telestart. Go into the basic settings of the auxiliary heater. Choose the program to activate the pairing process between the remote and the controller. Start that process with the go button and press the off button on the switch itself. VCDS confirms that the process has been successful. We can now move on to manually testing the whole system. Right, so let's test it. I've turned the ignition off. Admittedly the door's open and the car's open, but let's press that button and see what happens. Oh, there you go, it's kicked in. So you can probably hear that, it's whirring up like an aeroplane. Logical, you'd think you turn the screen on, but actually what you do is you press the mode button first, and then that toggles between heater and cooler. And then when you've got it to what you want, you then press on, and then it offers you how long it's going to run for, and that's the default time that I set previously. And if you want to change it, you hold down set, and then you use these keys to go up, and then you press OK. And you can probably see that just going to turn it off again. So obviously the date is wrong, so you hold down the set button and then that enters the setup menu, and then you can set the date, you can set what the remote does, you can put the child lock on, or you can set the mode that is going to be activated when you turn it on. So I want to set the date, so go to OK, and then I just go up, and I think today's date, I'll have to check on the phone quickly. I stopped changing the date there, so I'll just do it again. Okay, so it is the 21st of the 5th, 2025. Okay, now it's done. And that screen will go to sleep after a couple of minutes. Okay, so to summarise, the functionality that I'm going to get from the remote key, I think, and that is going to be fantastic for the winter time, to be able to just preheat the car 10 minutes before I want to leave. The engine's going to run a lot smoother. It's going to do put less wear on the engine on a cold morning. The car's going to be nice and warm to get into. The control screen, however, I invested a hell of a lot of time and money installing that, far more than I expected. The driving force for doing it was that I want to install an original Volkswagen standing heater into this fan. The heater it's got at the moment is a 2 kilowatt autotherm heater. I don't particularly like the control of that heater, and it is not powerful enough to keep the van warm on a winter skiing trip. So I want the extra power of the original Volkswagen heater, which is 3 kilowatts. And yeah, the people I spoke to on campsites that had that heater fitted, they had no complaints at all. Rather have the control system that this offers, where it just gives you the 5 different levels and you run that heater at, than the complicated various different methods that you can use with the autotherm. And yeah, in the end, just want to take it off and put the original one on, which the car should have had from the factory. Yeah, so fitting the screen, a lot of effort, but maybe it's worth it if you want it. And yeah, you know, it's nice to have that in now. It's going to add a little bit of value to the car, hopefully, and you know, I've done the best job that I can fitting it, and it's error-free, so happy about that. Okay, right, the next project that I'm going to be working on is doing a self-close for the sliding door, and yeah, if you might take me a couple of months to get that video up, but that's what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.